everyone, welcome back to our channel and to our A1 Italian series. Today we're going to start with chapter 2, which is Io e gli altri. I hope you have your textbook open in front of you and let's begin. So, as usual, on the first page of each chapter you have these themes of communication and grammar that will be covered in the chapter. Of course, we will be covering those in our lesson as well. First up, we have vocabulario, which is a bunch of words that you need to find an explanation for. You could just do it the usual way, of course, which is to translate from Italian to your mother tongue, which is okay, you can do it that way. But what I prefer is if you went to Google Images, right, and search for the word instead. That gives you a much better idea. For example, when you Google insegnante, which is this word right here, you're going to find pictures of a man or a woman in a classroom, maybe in front of a blackboard, in front of a bunch of students, and you get the idea, oh, okay, that's what an insegnante is, right? And that's much better than just translating and thinking, oh, okay, well, insegnante is teacher, okay, fine. So that's a much better way of doing things. Let me also do the same for you so you get an idea. So let's try and avoid translating directly from Italian to English, or, in your case, whatever your first language might be, because I'm not saying it's bad, but it's way better for your memory if you learn additional languages the way you learned your mother tongue, essentially. So we go on to Google Images and we're going to look for each of these words, and you can kind of guess in the meanwhile what that could be without necessarily translating. Of course, we will translate at the end, just so we, have it there. Sometimes there is no option. Sometimes you do kind of just reach out to that translation. But yeah, it's much better for you to learn visually. Of course, not everyone's a visual learner, but many people are, and it's a good, aid. So here we are on Google Images. Now, when you Google Bene, you find a lot of stuff. And so maybe now this can be confusing, right? Because what exactly is that supposed to do? So you can search for meaning, but what I prefer instead is if you just added, this right here. But then again, it's such a common word that you're going to find lots of stuff. So sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly. I probably said this in maybe another lesson, but usually this works nicely for nouns. So sostantivo, a noun, because nouns are things, nouns are objects. So like right now, if I look for insegnante, that's going to be a lot easier for you. You see, what's an insegnante? You get the idea immediately. You don't even really have to think, right? Because that's because insegnante is a noun. And so it's a thing, it's an object. Well, they're people, but you get the idea. And so that is much better. With nouns, it works really, really well. With adverbs and adjectives and actions as well, verbs may not really work so well. So of course, like bene just means, good or really good. You can also make this even better. Like if you want to say really, really good, you can say benissimo, benissimo. So that kind of issimo ending is something that you'll encounter a lot in Italian. So be prepared. All it really does, it kind of intensifies, like, when you add very in English, right? Beautiful, very beautiful. So that's, why we add issimo to really just kind of intensify whatever adverb or adjective you have. Okay, so male, bene, bene is good, male is bad or not really so good. So these you may not, like if you search for male right now, you'll just get the English male. So it doesn't always work out. You could maybe go to google.it, right? You could try that. Let's see if that works out. But again, it's kind of like the same thing, more or less. Let's say, for example, I search for male. What do I find? I find all of this, which is really not what I'm looking for. That's, so that's one of the problems. But it's not a bad idea. So that's one of the problems with searching online, like on Google Images. It works sometimes really nicely, some other times not so well. And at this stage, of course, you probably, I mean, you wouldn't be expected to figure out, okay, is this word a noun, verb, etc. Because some of these verbs, I mean, verbs and words, both, you're coming across them for the first time. So, I mean, let's just continue with the lesson. So I'll tell you which one's which, so you don't have to do all of the hard work. Grazie. Grazie is, well, very common, a very common word that means thank you or even just thanks. So, thank you. Some of these, of course, we have to just translate them. There's no other way because it's not like studente, amico, insegnante. Even verbs. For example, if you take the verb parlare, and you can, we'll go, okay, we're on google.et, that's good. Parlare, okay, so we just look for parlare. Now, the problem is, again, with verbs, you do find sometimes these types of images that don't really help you understand the meaning, but then you find, aha, oh, what are they doing? There's speech bubbles. All of them have their mouths open. Parlare, maybe that means to speak. So, sorry for my voice. Here as well, parlare, you can figure out, okay, one person's doing the talking, the other person's doing the listening. Okay. This also gives you a good idea of what that could mean. So it works really nicely for nouns, nicely enough for verbs, and not so well for anything else practically. Molto lieto is really kind of formal. Now, when you're introduced to someone and you're like, okay, pleased to meet you, that's what you could also just say piacere. That's way, way, way more common. Now, of course, when I look for molto lieto, what do I find? I find food, restaurants, people, not really what I'm looking for. That's because molto lieto is, an expression. It's not a noun, it's not a verb, and so that's why Google Images, the trick that I shared with you, doesn't work so well. But yes, for things, works really nicely. So molto lieto, pleased to meet you, pleased to make your acquaintance, pleased to meet you, or make your acquaintance. That's very, very formal, even in English. There we go. Oops, acquaintance. And then we've got, let me just make that up here so I have more space. But yeah, like I said, you can also just say piacere. You can say piacere, that is, has the same meaning, but piacere is a lot more common. And it's somewhat informal as well. Molto lieto is very old-fashioned, kind of formal. But piacere works really well too. It's the same thing. So both of them mean the same thing. Now, what could amico mean? Some of you, a lot of these words are very easy. Of course, studente is naturally student. You don't even have to think. You don't have to think at all. But what if I, for example, because amico is definitely a noun. Whoops, mamico, that's not the right thing. Amico, now what could this be? Now, the problem is that some really, really popular words do tend to, be taken by companies, brands, etc. So you find a lot of random unrelated stuff. But if you come from like a Spanish background, for example, right? Amigo, amico, even French, ami. So that one's fairly easy. This one's a friend. Studente is, of course, a student. That one's also kind of a no-brainer. And then we have insegnante. We've looked at this one, looked at the pictures, a person, man or woman, in front of a board or in front of students in a classroom. What are they? They're a teacher. There we go. Parlare. We just saw an image of parlare with, somebody was talking and the other person was listening. You had all these speech bubbles. So this is speaking. This is what I'm doing right now. Io parlo. Fare, what could that mean? Now, if you look for fare, you'll get the English fare, which is essentially how much you paid for like a ride, something like that. So again, of course, that's a verb. You'll notice that in Italian, verbs tend to have ARE endings quite often, most of the time, but you also have other verbs that end in ERE as well. There's another ending as well, but let's not worry about that right now. Let's not worry about that. So we've got fare, which is to do. Well, to make, fare, to make or to do something, to make something. Stare, Stare can be to stay, or essentially it's kind of not necessarily to stay like in one place. That's not quite the same thing. But stare is used a lot like when you express how you're feeling. So, sto bene, I'm doing well. So it can mean stay, but it can also kind of be just, to be. It's not the same thing as essere though. So you need to know the difference between stare and essere, because essere is like way, way, way broader. It's wider. It has broad applicability. You use essere so often. Stare, it kind of is used within fixed expressions a lot more. So of course it does mean stay, but it can also sometimes be a form of be. Sto male, I'm not doing very well today. Sto bene, I'm doing really well today, right? So I am, right, can be a form of be. But that's not like, again, it's a fixed expression. Sto male, sto bene. Those are fixed expressions. So, and also, of course, come stai? You say that a lot. Then we have lavorare. Let's also try and just check here first. Now, what could that be? Okay, well, this is definitely not what lavorare means. You shouldn't be doing that when you're doing this thing. So, but this guy, what is he doing? Or, this person, what's she doing? Both of them are doing the same thing. You can see they're in a work environment. They're in an office of some type. They're hooked onto their computer. They're thinking, they're typing. This is an activity that they're getting paid for, right? They're not at home, right? They're not resting, they're not relaxing, they're working, right? So lavorare is to work. And then you have abitare. What could that be? Let's go and have a look. Now, sometimes this may work, may not work, and when it doesn't work, of course, I'll let you know. Like in this case, it's some kind of magazine. So that doesn't really help us at all. But abitare means to live somewhere, to, in a way, not exactly stay, but essentially where do you live? Could also be in English, you can say, okay, where do you stay? But stare and abitare are different. Abitare is like when you give out your, like your address or your city, right? Where do you live? Where do you live? In which city do you live in? Or what's your current address, right? So that's when you use abitare. So that's a really small bunch of words. Try and commit them to memory. But really, it's kind of easy because with this course book, you have so many exercises, audio as well, that you do. I find that this course book is a lot more audio heavy, which is good, which is a great thing because you're not just doing, text-based exercises. So that's really helpful, and it's a lot easier to commit things to memory when you're, not just reading them, but you're also listening to them. So that's great. Okay, then we have our next exercise. Come va? Come va? A very common question to ask people. How are you? Come va? Come stanno queste persone? How are these people doing? Ascolta, listen, e completa I dialoghi. Listen and complete the dialogues. And you have these options and you have these people. First, you have this pair, a man and a woman. Then you have this other pair, a man, he looks kind of tired, and a young woman. And then you have this pair, two men. And again, you have an older gentleman and another man. So you have now this person saying, well, we're going to listen to the tape first. And we'll listen to it first, we'll discuss what they said maybe, and then we'll listen to it again and we'll fill in the blanks. All right, so this is, if you have the tape with you, which you can find on the Alma Edizioni website, this is on page, let me tell you which page number this is. So this is on page 16? No. 18. That's right. This is page 18 and this is traccia. This is track 14. You'll see that there's a logo, a symbol. So all you have to do is play track 14. I will play that right now, of course. So we're going to listen to it twice. First, we'll just listen, maybe discuss what they said, and then we'll listen again and we'll do the exercise. Okay, so apparently there was some kind of an error. Let me just see if my audio capture works, because it should work, but there might be some kind of echo. Let me just check that real quick. Okay. So let me just fix that real quick.
Come va? Benissimo, grazie. Non c'è male.
Traccia lezione.
Okay, now we're going to listen to Traccia 14. We're going to listen to it once first, and maybe we'll discuss what they said, possibly, and then we'll listen to it once more, and then we'll write down our answers.
Lezione 2. Traccia 14.
Buongiorno signora, come sta?
Bene, grazie. E lei?
Ehi, ciao Guido, come stai?
Ah, oggi sto proprio male.
Oh, mi dispiace.
Ciao, come va? Benissimo, grazie.
Buonasera, signor Meli. Come va?
Non c'è male.
Okay, so we heard that. That was fairly simple and straightforward, but it's a good idea to listen twice, so we'll do that. But let's see. First up, we have this pair, and the man says, Buongiorno, signora, come sta? And because, of course, he's saying signora, do you think this is formal or do you think this is informal? Because he says, well, signora. And of course, he also says, come sta instead of come stai. Come stai would be informal, but here he says, come sta. Of course, he also says, signora. So, because of that, you know that, okay, this is rather formal. I mean, yes, they are meeting like on the street, so not exactly a formal environment, but they are addressing each other formally. So it doesn't really matter what the environment is like as long as the speakers decide how they want to address each other. And the woman also responds, LA. Of course, there's a blank before that, but you see lei, you know it's formal. Then we have the other pair, and this woman directly addresses this man as Guido. Hey, ciao Guido, come stai? Come stai? That's your clue that this is informal. And then we have the next pair. Come va? Benissimo, grazie. So, come va? Come vai? That's again, come va is kind of like, in both instances you can use it. So this one's kind of a wild card. And then you have the fourth pair. Again, the man says, come va? Like I was saying, it's kind of a wild card. You can use it in both contexts. You can see he's dressed up for work. So is the other man, right? He says, non c'è male. Okay, well, let's listen once more and then we'll fill in our blanks.
Lezione 2. Traccia 14.
Buongiorno signora, come sta?
Bene, grazie. E lei?
Ehi, ciao Guido, come stai?
Ah, oggi sto proprio male.
Oh, mi dispiace.
Ciao, come va? Benissimo, grazie.
Buonasera, signor Meli. Come va?
Non c'è male.
Okay, so let's see. Now here first up we have Buongiorno signora, come sta? And she responds, Bene, grazie. E lei? And then we have this pair, and you can see she addresses him with his first name. Ehi, ciao Guido, come stai? And he responds, oggi sto proprio male. He's not feeling well. Oh, mi dispiace. Mi dispiace. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry about that. Just, I'm sorry. Mi dispiace is so universal. You can use it for a lot of things. When you're sorry about some bad news someone's shared, when you are sorry about something you have done, mi dispiace is universal. And then we have this pair, come va? And what do you say before come va? Well, he just says ciao. Ciao, come va? And the man says, benissimo, grazie. So you see, bene is good and benissimo. It's like a superior version. Benissimo. He's not just bene, he's benissimo. He's feeling really, really good. And then we have the last pair. And the man says, buonasera, signor Meli. Signor Meli. You'll notice something weird here. We have signora, we have signore. Why is this Signor Meli? Why not Signore Meli? In fact, this was one of the first things that I learned that actually made a mistake. We had this Teacher's Day thing, and I made a little card for our professor, and I wrote Professore Bove. And he was happy. He was, of course, nice about it. But then he also told me that, okay, well, it should be Professor Bove, and not, because when you have someone's last name, by the way, this does not apply to Signora, Professoressa. Nope, it doesn't apply to the female forms, only to the E ending. Signore, Professore. So you can, of course, say Signore, Professore, but in that case, you don't have a name. You don't have a last name. But when you have a last name, that's a surname. So when you have that, then you got to take the E out. So that becomes buongiorno, buonasera, signor Meli, buonasera, professor Meli. So the E, you got to take that out. So here we've got, of course, the last one. Buonasera, signor Meli. Come va? Non c'è male. And one thing that I'd like you to focus on is also how they say things, because a lot of the times in a lot of the courses that I've done, lessons that I've been in, people, they have nice grammar, their vocabulary is good as well, but they really just don't emote when they speak. And you can get by in other languages maybe, but I feel like when you're speaking Italian, you do have to have a bit of expressiveness, and that's something that you'll notice in the audio tapes as well. So try and really push yourself. I mean, yes, not everyone is hyper expressive, and that's also perfectly okay, but I think you should try and push yourself just a little bit more. I know it might feel weird in the beginning, but this is a very expressive language. It's the language of art and opera and so on. So you really got to try and push yourself and really listen to how the speakers emote, how they express themselves when they say, oh, sto male, benissimo. You got to notice how they express themselves. So yeah. Okay, and then our next exercise. Cosa dici? What do you say quando chiedi a qualcuno? When you ask someone, come sta? How are they? Con il lei. What do you say when, well, essentially, con il lei is, of course, as you know, formale, and con il tu is informale. So, con il lei, cosa dici quando chiedi a qualcuno come sta? When the situation is formal, right? What do you say? Con il lei, you could say come sta. There you have it. Come sta. But con il tu, come stai? You add the I. And come va, as I was saying, come va is kind of universal. You can use it here, you can use it there as well. So there you go. Come va is a safe bet. If you don't know, oh my God, I'm talking to my professor or I'm talking to my manager. I don't know if I should use come sta or come stai. Ooh, I'm confused. In that case, just go for come va. You can't go wrong with come va. So anytime you're stuck and you don't know, oops, I forgot, you can just go for come va. Come va goes for both formal situations and informal situations. So come sta is Con il lei, formale. Come stai is informale. Con il tu. So when you're talking to friends, some family members as well, anybody who's younger than you as well, that's when you use come stai. And then we have scrivi le risposte, right answers nell'ordine giusto, dalla più positiva, più, from most positive alla più negativa, from most positive to most negative. You have these expressions, right? Benissimo, non c'è male. What else? Bene. What else? Proprio male. What's the worst one? You have a few expressions. Let's write them down. When people respond to these come va, come sta, come stai, what have they said? One person said bene. Over here, bene, grazie. So she said bene. Let's underline that. Proprio male. Proprio male. Oops. Proprio male. And then we have, what else? Benissimo. Benissimo. Got bene, got proprio male, benissimo. And what else? Non c'è male. So we've got non c'è male. Whoops, I forgot to add over here. There we go. So now, bene is obviously good. Benissimo is even better. Male is bad. Non c'è male. Not too bad. Proprio male. Really bad. You'll notice that this man who says non c'è male, he's okay, he's fine. But the man who says oggi sto proprio male, he's like, oh, he's really like, he's not in good shape. Maybe he's, I don't know, sad, tired, hungover, something like that. Okay, so let's arrange them. So bene is obviously okay, that's, good. This could be bene. Benissimo is the most positive, right? So we'll put that in here, benissimo. And then, non c'è male, not too bad. I'm doing just fine. Non c'è male. And then we've got proprio male. Really bad, quite bad, actually fairly bad. So that's how we'd arrange them. Benissimo is when you're in top form, you're feeling on top of the world. Life is great. Bene is, it could also be just something you say when you're being polite. Yeah, sto bene, sto bene. When you don't really want to go deeper into details of how you're really doing, you can just say, sto bene. But yeah, you could also just say, non c'è male, non c'è male. Yeah, it's fine, so. But proprio male, something's really bad. Okay, then we have our next exercise. So the next exercise on pagina 19, which is page 19, is chiedetevi a vicenda come state, which is to ask your neighbor how they're doing. Now you have two options. Depending on whether your neighbor is a stranger, much older than you, your friend, an acquaintance, the same age as you have two options. You can go with ciao, come va, or come stai, which is used in informal contexts. So if you're talking to someone who's the same age or younger than you, or any kind of informal context really, your friend and acquaintance as well, you can use come stai or come va. But if you're talking to a complete stranger, especially if they're older than you, or if they're, like let's say a professor or a doctor, etc., then you use come sta and not stai. But in case you find it too confusing right now in the beginning, you can always just default to come va. That one is universal. You can use it no matter whom you're talking to, so you don't really have to think too much. You can just ask ciao, buongiorno. Well, of course, if you are in informal contexts, it is a lot better to use buongiorno. Ciao is a little bit more informal. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, come va is universal. You can use that with absolutely anybody. Then the next thing we're going to do is our next exercise, piacere. Trasforma il dialogo, transform the dialogue, da informale a formale, from informal to formal. Now, I have this small table. There are two boxes, one on the left and one on the right, and you will notice that they have dialogues. Now, the first dialogue, what we'll do is we'll read that first, okay? So here it goes. Ciao Giuliana, come stai? Bene, grazie. E tu? Non c'è male, grazie. Ah, ti presento il signor Lucchetti. Signor Lucchetti, la signora Vinci. Piacere. Molto lieto. So that's the dialogue. Now you'll notice that there's a few words that are italicized. Stai, tu, ti presento, which are all informal terms. What you need to do, your exercise, is to transform these into formal speech. And we'll do that in this box on the right. We have some blanks here. Let's read the entire text, well, the dialogue, with the blanks. Buonasera, signora Vinci. Come blank? Bene, grazie. E blank? Non c'è male, grazie. Ah, le presento il signor Lucchetti. Signor Lucchetti, la signora Vinci. Piacere. Molto lieto. That last part remained the same. Now, instead of Ciao Giuliana, you have Buonasera Signora Vinci. So you see how ciao changes to Buonasera, and instead of the first name Giuliana, you have Signora Vinci, Mrs. or Miss, well, Mrs. Vinci, a formal way of addressing someone. Now, instead of come stai, what can I use? There's two possibilities. As always, you can just use come va, but you need to change, transform, stai, not va, right? So, stai becomes, you just remove the I. Sta, come sta? So, stai becomes sta. Let's type that in here. So, come sta? Come sta? Bene, grazie. E? And now you have to change tu to the formal version, which would be lei, but that has to be with a capital L. Don't forget that. Lei, lei. And there we go. So, come stai? Come sta? And tu becomes lei. And you'll notice ti presento becomes le presento. That one was already done for us. So that's how you change dialogue from informal to formal. You can also do the opposite. You could change a dialogue now from formal to informal. There's just a couple things to keep in mind. You have signora or signore. You have tu o lei, stai o sta, ciao or buongiorno, buonasera, right? And tu becomes lei, lei becomes tu. That's all you really have to remember. Now we're going to listen to this. This is traccia. Okay, this is track 15. I'm going to play that for you. And let's see where the track is. Okay, I'm going to mute myself so there's no echo.
Traccia 15.
Buonasera, signora Vinci. Come sta?
Bene, grazie. E lei?
Non c'è male, grazie. Ah, le presento il signor Lucchetti. Signor Lucchetti, la signora Vinci.
Piacere.
Molto lieto.
Traccia 15.
Buonasera, signora Vinci. Come sta?
Bene, grazie. E lei?
Non c'è male, grazie. Ah, le presento il signor Lucchetti. Signor Lucchetti, la signora Vinci.
Piacere.
Molto lieto.
Okay, so that's our tape that's done with. Now we're going to do another exercise. Una mia amica, a friend of mine, ascolta il dialogo, listen to the dialogue, e scrivi I nomi, write the names dei personaggi nel disegno, of the people in this design that you see. There's 3 people, there's a man, or, well, that's definitely a man because of the hairline. Okay, so that's a man on a Vespa, probably. There's another man and he has his friend with him. I mean, he's got his hand on her shoulder, so you can assume they're friends or they're at least close. Okay, so first we need to listen once again. What we'll do maybe is, as always, we'll listen twice so that it's easier for you. And then we're going to write down, okay, what are their names? So I'll mute myself before I play the tape so there's no echo.
Traccia 16.
Ehi Massimo, ciao, come stai?
Ah, Roberto, ciao. Io sto benissimo, e tu?
Anch'io, grazie. Questa è Susanna, una mia amica portoghese di Lisbona. E questo è Massimo, un mio amico.
Ciao.
Piacere.
Sai, Susanna parla molto bene l'italiano.
Ah sì? Io invece purtroppo non parlo il portoghese.
Traccia 16.
Ehi Massimo, ciao, come stai?
Ah, Roberto, ciao. Io sto benissimo, e tu?
Anch'io, grazie. Questa è Susanna, una mia amica portoghese di Lisbona. E questo è Massimo, un mio amico.
Ciao.
Piacere.
Sai, Susanna parla molto bene l'italiano.
Ah sì? Io invece purtroppo non parlo il portoghese.
Okay, so did you get their names? You have Massimo over here, you have Roberto over here with the sunglasses, and you have his friend Susanna. In fact, there is let me just, verify that for you so we know that for sure. We've got, okay, great. So we have, okay, let me just check if it's all fine. Because you had two male, voices. So sometimes you can be a little bit confused there. But you can listen twice, thrice, as many times as you need to. Leggi il dialogo e verifica. So you always have. The great thing is that this textbook, unlike others, provides all of the transcripts right here in the textbook. You don't have to go searching anywhere else. Ok. Ehi Massimo, ciao, come stai? Ah, Roberto, ciao. Io sto benissimo. E tu? Anch'io, grazie. Questa è Susanna, una mia amica portoghese di Lisbona. E questo è Massimo, un mio amico. So this one's Massimo, confirmed. Susanna with only one N, and this one's Roberto. Ciao, piacere. Sai, Susanna parla molto bene l'italiano. Ah sì? Io invece purtroppo non parlo il portoghese. Okay, so that's our dialogue, that's our characters, and then we go on to the next thing. Cerca, search, or find, nel dialogo, in the dialogue, I verbi mancanti, the verbs that are missing, e completa la tabella, and complete the table. So we have io, tu, lui, lei, or lei. This capital L, lei, is formal, as you'll remember, and lui and lei are he and she. And we have these two verbs, stare, parlare. You already have io sto over here. What would parlare be? Again, they're both are, so they conjugate similarly, right? So parlare becomes parlo. How about, and this one you remember because we've done this when we changed the dialogue from informal to formal. You know what we did with that word? Come blank. So you have come va, which of course we're not doing va over here. We're doing stare. And we changed something to sta when we formalized it. All we did was kick out the I. So this one is stai. So that's how you can remember these tiny things. But how about parlare? How would this change from parli? Parla. Do you see how similar their endings are? This one's a little bit different stai instead of you might think, oh well, if it's parlo, parli, parla, maybe this should be sto, sti, sta. You might think that way, and I thought that way as well, but it is in fact stai. Now we don't know why that is the case, but it is what it is, and that's how we need to learn that. But the great thing is you can easily change from informal to formal by just kicking out the I, right? So if you have I, then you know it's informal. If there's no I, then you know it's formal. There we go. And how can you negate a sentence? All you have to do is add non before your verb. Tu parli il portoghese. Io parlo il tedesco. Io non parlo il tedesco. Tu non parli il portoghese. All you do is add non. Then we have our next exercise. Chi è? A turno presentate le persone ritratte nelle foto. And you have an example sentence. Let's read that one. Questa è Maria, una mia amica spagnola di Siviglia. So that's Maria from Sevilla. Who's next? Peter. And he is a man. Maria is a woman. That's why you have questa, right? So questa changes to questo. Questo. Let me change my keyboard settings so I have the E coming up properly. Questo è Peter. Do I write una? Do I write un? Do I write uno? Well, uno would only be for example, you have sport, right? SP, those words that start with that, sport, zaino, things like that. But here you just have un. And again, he's male, so mia changes to mio. Amica also changes to amico. Now, okay, let's do it this way instead. How about we have, instead of Maria, we have Mario, right? Their nationality remains the same, their city remains the same. Let's just change Maria to Mario so you have a nicer way, an easier way of understanding. So questa changes to questo. Let me just, highlight that or change that so you see. Okay, let's make that stereotypically pink and blue. Questa becomes questo. Questo è Mario. And questa è Maria. Right? Una mia amica. Look at all of these endings in A. Right? Seville doesn't change, by the way, because that's a proper noun. That's the name of a city. So now we change una to uno, right? Because you're talking about a man now. Mia. Well, uno doesn't change. In fact, sorry about that. This is oversimplifying. This changes to un. Mio amico. So mia changes to mio. And amica changes to amico. Whoops, that should be blue. Spagnola changes to spagnolo. And everything else remains the same. That's all you have to do. So, questo è Peter. Un mio amico, where is Cologne? That's in Germany. What's the Italian word for Germany? Un mio amico tedesco, because that's nationality, not the country's name that you're going to use. You could of course say he is from Germany. You could use that sentence, with those specific words, but with nationality, you have other words, right? So, un mio amico tedesco, if you're talking about Petra, you would say una mia amica tedesca. There you go. So, tedesco di Colonia. How about Carlos? Questo è Carlos, un mio amico. Where is Buenos Aires? That's Argentina. So, un mio amico argentino di Buenos Aires. Who's next? Irina. Questa, because she's a woman. Questa è Irina. Una mia amica russa di Mosca. And the last one, also a woman. Questa è Annie. Una mia amica francese di Nizza. I will just be sure to check because sometimes I, in a hurry, forget things. So we've got our, whoops, can you see the page still? Okay, yes, the page is visible. That's good to see. Okay, so we have, and this could be, hold on just a sec. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Sorry, my mic had an issue, but I fixed it. Okay. All right, so we're back and we've done all 5 of these people. Well, the first one was already done for us. Then we have the next one. Che lingue parla? Which language do you speak? Completate insieme, complete together, la lista con le lingue che conoscete. Poi lavorate in coppia, then work in pairs. Ogni studente sceglie 3 lingue dalla lista. Every student picks 3 languages from the list. Il partner dovrà indovinare quali lingue parla. The partner has to guess which language the other person speaks, parla l'altro, solo con 4 domande. And so it's kind of a game that you could play with, well, of course, we don't have a partner right here, so we're kind of, yeah. But we have a Discord and we're working on making that a lot more active. So just, maybe join the Discord. I think the link should be in our description right here. So that should be fairly helpful. Once we have a couple more members, I was thinking of maybe having more people come in and, we could do exercises live, like with me here together. I think it would be a lot of fun if we had even just like 2 or 3 people. So that could be something that we could incorporate. So, right, then we have our next exercise, presentazioni. In gruppi di 3, so in groups of 3, scegliete una delle seguenti situazioni. Pick one of these following situations e preparate un dialogo. Poi presentatelo alla classe. So, make a dialogue for any of these. Festa. Ad una festa presentate un o una amico o amica ad un o una italiano o italiana. Oppure libreria. Siete in una libreria in compagnia di un amico straniero o straniera. You are in the library in the company of a foreign friend of yours and you meet somebody that you know. E incontrate un o una conoscente. Presentate le 2 persone. So the same thing that you do over here. Here you have an example. See? You do the same thing. The same thing. All you have to do is change the names. And you might, for example, over here, you have how do you present someone. So this is the exact same thing. Now, this one is, of course, informal. So this is what you would do, informal, right? Ti presento il mio amico Peter, right? Da dove viene Peter? So where does he come from? You explain he comes from whatever city. You could say un mio amico tedesco di Colonia, right? So the same thing, you just have to make little dialogues. In fact, this could be a great exercise. It'll take you maybe, let's say, 7 to 8 minutes maximum, not more than that. It might even just take you like 3 or 4 minutes, but let's just say 10 minutes. Do both of these. In fact, I would say do both of these because when I was studying for my A1 exam, that was like many years ago, I would do every exercise. In class with the teacher, with the professor, we would do a few exercises, but from the book, I would do every single exercise, and that's how I ended up at the top. So it's not important whether you're first in class, second in class, etc. My point is that that's going to set a very good foundation for your future when you do A2, B1, B2, etc. So do as many exercises as you can. What I'd like you to do is you can create your own dialogue. This could be our classwork, our like homework, sorry, not classwork, homework. So you could, whoops. Okay, there we go. Okay. So write one dialogue for the festa and one dialogue for the libreria. Okay, and post them in the comment section and I'll check them for you. I'll suggest, corrections you can make or changes you can make and I'll check them for you. So all you have to do is do this and post both of your dialogues. Post them maybe in separate comments or maybe in the same comment. Just make sure you leave enough space. Yeah, so I'll check those for you. That could be your homework. Then we have our next exercise. Che lavoro fa? What work does this person do? Abbina le foto ai profili di LinkedIn. Join the pictures to the profiles of LinkedIn. Let's look at what this person is doing. So that's a woman And you can see it's not a very clear picture, but someone's got their hand outstretched and she's applying nail paint. There's a lot of like skin creams and skincare stuff, hair care. Oh, I recognize that. That's a shampoo. So there's a lot of like beauty products in there. So that's something that we could look out for. Let's see, we've got Sylvia. Okay, that is a woman's name, so that matches. However, it says avvocato, advocate. And you can see, even if I don't know what advocate, avvocato means, that's okay. Servizi legali. Studio legale. Oh, okay. Studio legale. That doesn't seem to match legal studies. That's not quite what she's doing here. So let's try the next one. Annalisa Razzauti, architetto. Well, that one's really easy to figure out. She's definitely not an architect, so we'll check something else. Porzia Cattaneo, estetista. There we go. There we have a hint. Salute, benessere e fitness. Hotel, Istituto di Medicina Naturale, estetista specializzata. There we go. So that matches really well. So picture number one could be B, most likely. We'll put that in here. How about the second one? Let's see what this person is doing. So they're wearing white. You can also see in the background some x-rays. So he's most likely a doctor of some kind, or at least related. He's definitely in healthcare. He's maybe recording something or teaching, maybe something of that sort, but he's definitely related to healthcare, and that's a man. So Sylvia, Annalisa, definitely no, because he's a man. The only option here is Federico. Dirigente medico, there we go, chirurgo, surgery, medicina. You have all these keywords that help you. So number two is C or G. How about number three? Number three is a woman. She's holding a bunch of files. She's dressed up professionally. So let's see. We have just two options, A or B. And A says avvocato, studio legale, so an advocate, lawyer. That seems to match because she's dressed very professionally. That's something you would expect to see a lawyer in. But let's also just check the next one to be sure. And right away for Annalisa, we have architetto. That doesn't match at all because architects usually don't dress up hyper formally. So 3 would be A. And then we have number 4. That's the last one that's remaining. Let's have a look. And there we go. This person is, they have all these drafting, these drawing, mechanical, all of these tools. It's a huge sheet of paper. She's drawing something. Of course, that's her only option left with the architetto, of course, so that one matches. But we also see, yes, it matches in terms of what she's doing right here. So number 4 would be D. There we go. So we've matched all of these people. And then we have faccio la segretaria. Ascolta il dialogo. Listen to the dialogue e segna le città che vengono nominate and mark which cities you hear in the dialogue. So as always, I'll mute myself and then we'll play the tape.
Traccia 17.
Siete di qui?
No, siamo di Napoli, ma abitiamo qui a Bologna.
Ah, di Napoli. E che cosa fate di bello? Studiate?
No, io lavoro in una scuola di lingue.
Sei insegnante?
No, faccio la segretaria.
E tu che lavoro fai?
Io sono impiegata in un'agenzia pubblicitaria. E tu dove lavori?
In uno studio fotografico.
Traccia 17.
Siete di qui?
No, siamo di Napoli, ma abitiamo qui a Bologna.
Ah, di Napoli. E che cosa fate di bello? Studiate?
No, io lavoro in una scuola di lingue.
Sei insegnante?
No, faccio la segretaria.
E tu che lavoro fai?
Io sono impiegata in un'agenzia pubblicitaria. E tu dove lavori?
In uno studio fotografico.
Okay, so there we go. There we have our two cities that were named. And the next thing, cerca nel dialogo le forme del verbo essere mancati e completa la tabella. Search in the dialogue the forms of the verb essere that are missing and finish the table. Let's look at the dialogue. Siete di qui? No, siamo di Napoli, ma abitiamo qui a Bologna. Ah, di Napoli. E che cosa fate di bello? Studiate? No, io lavoro in una scuola di lingue. Sei insegnante? No, faccio la segretaria. E tu che lavoro fai? Io sono impiegata in un'agenzia pubblicitaria. E tu dove lavori? In uno studio fotografico. Uno studio. You notice that? So uno is used when you have st, when you have z. Okay, our exercise is to find the missing forms of essere, which we have over here. We have the table. You'll remember that we have done essere and avere. We've done both of them. So this should be easy for you if you've done your revision. Okay, let's find io. Io. Where do we see io? Now, again, often we don't actually use the pronouns, but here you'll notice they have, to make it a bit easier for you. Io sono. So there we go. Io sono. Now, again, we have done this before, so this should be easy for you. Okay, and then we need to look for tu. So we have over here, again, there are, you can see that right here, sei. Often we don't really use the pronouns, as I was saying, so sometimes you might see, for emphasis, for example, e tu che lavoro fai? Why have they used tu over here? Because this person wants to say, okay, okay, now I'm talking to you. Earlier I was talking to someone else, but now I'm talking to you and I want to ask you what kind of work you do. That's why the emphasis, and that's why the tu is over here. Otherwise, normally it would not be, because it's kind of understood. The conjugation has, in a way, the pronoun kind of embedded in its meaning. So, tu sei, lui, lei è, noi siamo. Siamo di Napoli. Noi siamo. And then we also have, let's mark that. We also have right over here, siete. Siete di qui? Are you people from here? Siete. And the last one is sono. So we have our whole table complete over here. You'll also notice this right here, lavoro in un ufficio, uno studio, because you have the st, sp, z will always have uno. But how about un'agenzia? Why is there this apostrophe? Because it would be una agenzia, but when you say una agenzia, it sounds weird. That's really the explanation. It doesn't sound nice. That's the official explanation, is it doesn't sound nice. And so we have un'agenzia. So you avoid the doppia A, you avoid the double A sound, because it doesn't sound nice, and Italian is all about sounding nice. Okay, and then we have una scuola, which is of course feminine. Una, because the word scuola does not start with A, so that's why there's no apostrophe naturally. Okay,